It's draft talk time. That means Dave Syvertsen's back, the senior draft analyst for ourlads.com. How's it going, Dave?
Great. How about you?
Good.
Awesome.
So, by the
Right.
hey, I want to give a shout out to any because we've had good response as far as viewership with the reports that we've just put out, and we are way early in putting these reports out. But we thought it was a perfect time to do it because there are a certain amount of fan bases that are already thinking about the draft. I know that feeling as a Jet fan.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
And in the bowl games, which is what we're doing in this show again, it's a perfect opportunity to find out who's playing in these bowl games and how can I zero in on them while I watch a game that really I don't care about. But I was looking over Actually, let me go right to it. I was looking over the most popular reports. Which position report? Because we did quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver, blah, 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 blah. Which position report that we did do you think has the most traffic?
Oh, man. If I had to guess, I would say receiver
Really?
or quarterback.
Okay.
Receiver or quarterback?
Quarterback, number one.
Yeah. Quarterback number one. Okay.
And do you know number two then? It would be receiver?
Receiver? Is that what it is? Running back?
No. This might surprise you.
Tight end?
No.
Oh, man. Process of elimination.
That's true because we haven't done defense yet. We're going to do defense once the bowl reports are done. So
it's got to be one of the line positions.
Offensive
Tackle,
line.
guard. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody needs offensive line. I mean, that's such a strong talking point in the league right now. And if you go spend some time on the R-Lads depth charts, the NFL depth charts, everybody needs one or two linemen. And then I would even say everyone needs at least multiple backups right now. Like every team could say they're going into the draft saying they need offensive line help. And you see it this time of year when injuries pile up. That's when you start to realize, like, wow, we have no depth here. And it's a hard spot to translate from college to NFL.
It's happening with my team, the Jets.
Yeah.
I mean, sooner or later, you lose Elijah Vera Tucker. Becton was supposed to start when the season began, and then you have a couple other little minor injury things, and all of a sudden, you're looking up and you've got like Nate Herbig playing significant.
It ruins the game. It really like when you can't control the point of attack at all, and it's just quarters 1 through 4, you can't play your brand of football.
Right.
And I even think the bigger picture issue with this is as kids grow up, high school into college, they see that the money is made on the defensive line. And I think some of the best athletes that are big, they're just too big to play or too slow to play skill position player. They go to the defensive line or outside linebacker and the early stages of football. So when they get to college, they're already pot committed to that side of the ball. It's just you just don't have the athletes on the offensive line compared to the defensive side. And it's it can take 5, 10, 15 years for it to show up in the league like this. But I think that's exactly what has happened. It's kids are wanting to play. If they don't get to carry the ball in their hands, they want to play on the defensive line because they know that's just where your brand is built the highest, and that's where you make the most money. And now we're starting to see it. There's just a lack of supply of talent. So that's why every team, I feel like, wants at least another offensive lineman or two in the draft.
You can't have enough depth on the offensive line.
Right.
So,
yeah.
All right. Most popular player. This is harder because there's a lot of players.
I would say it's got to be one of the quarterbacks. I would say it's Bryce Young.
No.
Or, Will Levis.
No.
Quarterback?
Yes.
Tanner McKee?
Second.
Okay. There's a lot of love for that guy. I don't have it, but there's a lot of love for him. Hendon Hooker?
No.
CJ Stroud?
No.
Jake Haener?
Nope.
I was just going to say he's a fun kid to watch, a fun kid to talk about. Who am I missing right now? Is it your boy, McCall? Has he said anything about coming out yet?
He's transferring.
Okay, so he's going to be playing college next year. Where do you think he ends up? What's your prediction?
He's got to end up at a. He's actually. I heard he's got a setup already with Auburn.
Okay, so he's
going
to
go big. He has to go big.
He's going to go big. Yeah, yeah.
Why not?
I didn't know if it was going to be like Boston College big
No,
or
come on. Why wouldn't
SEC
he?
big.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, good for
Yes,
him. I
absolutely.
know that will be a fun part. Did you see that Knicks is going back to Oregon next year?
Okay.
He,
I think
yeah,
I'm okay with that because when you even brought it up on our conversation last week,
yeah,
you were bringing up a couple of names. I forget what we were talking about specifically. And I was like, well, let's not get into the conversation now, but it's like Bo Nix. I'm not really sold
yeah,
on Bo Nix as an NFL quarterback just yet. So I'm glad he's going
yeah.
back.
I am too. I just kept on saying Taysom Hill when I
There
watched
you
him play
go. Yeah,
football early in the year, but then he
he
elevated
did.
his
Yep.
play, but then we saw it come back down to what we've seen down the stretch the last game or two. So great decision for him to go back, and I do think he could play himself into a mid-round draft pick prospect.
All right. Now, on this show, we are going to talk about the bowl games from today because there is a game going on right now as we're recording or in the next few minutes through
Yep.
Friday, the 23rd. We're going to record again on the 23rd, and then that'll take us through the bowl games. I believe that will be through the 27th, something like that. And
Yep.
then we'll have we'll have a 27th report. And then on the 30th, we'll do our playoff. As well as some of the
Right.
games after the playoffs, because there's other games
Right.
after the playoffs.
Yeah, this is where it really antes up.
Yes.
I've already started doing my note taking on who we're going to talk about. I mean, there's just so many guys. We're probably going to have to dumb down the list a little bit. These games, you really only have one or two guys to watch. So it's a little bit easier to do it game by game. But I think what we'll do down the road is maybe just say, hey, here are the 5 guys to watch from each day.
And we'll get more into the in-depth analysis of those guys when we have 4 months to do it. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
absolutely.
And we also want to encourage our viewers to do what they have been doing. They've been making suggestions, and we have placated. Matter of fact, we've got a ticker going on right now, so you can see the day. Actually, I believe I have it down by the bowls. Might have it by the dates. We've got the player positions, the player numbers, the player name itself, what school he went to, and in parentheses, right now where Dave believes will be the draft status of each of those players. All of the analysis, all of the draft status is completely open to change because it is way early. Even at this point, it's way early. And so, and then even if the name's not on the list, just keep in mind that there's or let's say, especially the draft status, that could definitely change. I doubt there's a player. I mean, do you think? Now, let me ask you, because I was going to say, well, I thought there's a player that's not on the list that will be on the list, but I shouldn't say that because I should ask you. I didn't think you didn't have Frank Gore Jr. on the list, did you? Okay.
Nope. Did not have.
So what's
Frank
up with Frank Gore
Jr.?
Jr.? For instance, why wasn't he on your list as a free agent? Too small?
I'm just not sure. I do believe he has another year of eligibility.
So you really just don't even think he's coming out?
Yeah, I would say that's probably going to be the common answer. If you ever see a name that is draft eligible but still has eligibility left, if you don't see him on here, that's usually my answer. Is I didn't think he had the kind of year, and I don't think he has the kind of tools to just say, "Hey, I'm coming out."
Yeah.
I think a lot of these kids, and it almost breaks my heart every year these kids come out. There's a lot of kids that come out that should not.
I know,
and it's just because they're draft eligible because someone got in their ear that usually had selfish intentions to try and get these kids to go into the league and forego their last year of college. And that's actually a problem that I know some people in the league have talked about trying to fix. Is kids coming out, leaving their education behind, and not getting drafted and not making a roster, and all of a sudden you're left without that education. So, if you ever see a kid that you thought should be in there, hey, throw them in the comments. I'll definitely hit you up. I'll comment back if you have a question. But it's more often than not someone I just don't think is going to be coming out.
And at some point, and I'm already working because we haven't had a live show yet on this channel, but I'm working on that right now. So at some point, I would bet that we'll have a few live shows that will give you an opportunity as we're on, and maybe during a mock draft show, because we're going to have a handful of those. Maybe we'll take a mock draft show, make it live, and that'll give everybody an opportunity to interact with us live. And you could comment, questions, things of that nature as we're doing the show. Matter of fact, Adam W. Asked, do you think we're going to see a lot of prospects staying at college depending on their NIL deals and projected career path? And I did respond to Adam, basically saying yes. In my opinion, Dave, I think that this is going to be in the long run a good reason why to have this NIL, because I think you are going to have those players as long as, like you said, as long as nobody's whispering in their ear that they should be drafted higher than they're going to be. That you know what, I'm going to be a 5th or 6th or 7th round guy if I come out this year. I'm making a little money now. I don't have to come out for financial reasons like I had to years ago or just a couple of years ago. So let me get my education. Let me get another year of education. And let me see if I can improve along the lines, improve my draft stock as well.
Yeah, every year you see kids that improve their draft stock in their final year, and it ends up. I mean, Joe Burrow is my favorite story. He goes number one overall. Nobody had him as a top 5 round pick before that final year, and that's an extreme case. But every year it happens where a kid comes out and goes back, does not come out. He goes back to school for that final year and plays his way into a higher draft slot and a lot more money. And I do think financial reasoning is a huge part of why kids come out before they should. And, I can't judge it from my chair here. Everyone has their own personal situations with their families. And I respect a young man that's going to come out and try to take care of his family, even if he could have been a higher pick in the future. But the fact that the NIL deals are going to impact that a little bit, I mean, it's not even a question in my mind. It will. The top guys are still going to come out, I believe. Richardson's a great example. He would have made bank at Florida next year in the NIL, but he thinks he's ready for the NFL, and so does his camp. And I think he's still going to end up being at the very least a top 45 pick. I think he'll be a first rounder. So, I think it's a win-win. I still think there's a lot of regulation to come with the NIL deals. I think it's still kind of the wild, wild west. That teams are trying to poach Drake May out of North Carolina right now just for the sake of, hey, you can make more via NIL at our SEC program next year. And that kind of stuff needs to stop.
Yes.
And there's going to be regulations that come in at some point. But I do think when it comes to the NFL draft, you will see more kids come out every year. I mean, I don't think everyone even realizes how many dozens of kids come out of school and they don't get drafted. And they thought they were, and they were told they were. And now they're left with no NIL, no NFL contract. I think the safety net of the NIL, what that provides for kids that are on the fence, will keep them in school longer.
I hope so. And again, and just like you mentioned, Burrow, he's also the poster boy for transfers. And that's the reason why the transfer portal is a good thing, I just think. And but like you said, we all have to.
It's extra work. It's extra work for us, but it's great for the kids.
All right. So, as I said, there's a game today, and that's the Eastern Michigan game against San Jose State. So that's the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. And really, the 3 guys are all playing the same position, the top 3 guys. But let's start off with the one guy for Eastern Michigan, and that's Jose Ramirez. Talk a little bit about the former Arizona kid and why you think, because people look at Eastern Michigan and go, but let's remember, there's a top pass rusher playing for the Las Vegas Raiders right now that came from Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
You never know where they're coming from.
Yeah, there's a lot of good players in the NFL from that conference too. So I love watching MAC football, especially later in the year. They start going on Monday nights and Tuesday nights and Wednesday nights. Just, you can watch football every day once that happens. But Ramirez, he's bounced around a little bit. He started off at Arizona, ended up at Eastern Michigan. He led the nation this year with 12 sacks.
That's it?
If you have
12? Wow.
Yeah, I know. It's funny that the number is usually a lot higher. But if you have any college football guru friends out there, ask them who led the country in sacks. I bet very few will come up with that. They'll just guess Will Anderson from Alabama. But he was second in the country in tackles for loss per game. And so he's a productive football player. And then you watch him play. And the reason he is productive, it's not just speed and burst and size. If anything, I think he's pretty average across the board there, and which will hinder the grade a little bit. But he knows how to play. He bends well. He's got great awareness. He knows how to set up blockers, really heavy hands, and he has a nose for the ball. There's certain guys that they know angles and creases, and they play at a different speed when they get near the ball, like a shark in water. That's how he plays. His performance against Western Michigan, I believe it was this year, it was one of the more dominant edge presence games I saw all year. And he was literally unblockable. And in the MAC, if you're going to draft a kid, you want to see that at least a few times. You're not playing against the highest level of college football.
Yes.
Can't hold that against him, but you would like to see him dominate, and he did that several times.
Yeah, actually, let's see if we go back. Well, I was already off of them, but let me see because I'm interested to see how Crosby was. So we've got, what was that? Yeah, about 2017. Yeah, okay. So let's go to 2018. Crosby had 7.5 sacks before he left. 7.5.
Yeah.
And he has more than that in the NFL. Actually, had 11 in 2017. But you could just tell, even in college, man, that guy's big.
He's huge.
But you figured, but come on, he can only get 7.5 sacks in his final season. And at MAC, he can't be that good, but.
Right. Yeah.
And sometimes it's coaching, too.
I mean, these traits and tools that you have to look at. It can't just be the box score. And, this is why scouting takes so much time. You really have to watch these kids play football. And, a lot of us knew Max Crosby had something in him that just was not being translated into production at that level. But the speed, the burst, the size, the hand strength, Ramirez is not the same player as him. It's just a different player overall. But if anyone that's going to use the argument that he did not go to a big enough program, I can rattle off multiple names that did not go to huge programs or have huge careers in college. You have to look for the traits, and you have to see him repeat over and over. All 10 of the kid's sacks came in the last 6 games. He actually got a little bit of a quiet start when you're just talking about, rushing the passer and making an impact. And then he exploded in the second half. We kind of knew he had it in him already. And that just kind of confirmed that he is, he's always that close. He's capable of really taking over football games.
Okay, and then the other players you can see on the ticker there for Eastern Michigan. We move over to San Jose State, and these 3 guys, the top 3 guys, and I'm going to include Harmon, who's your top free agent on the list.
Okay.
Because of the fact, the kid had 135 tackles last season, which is pretty eye-opening. 94 this season. And I know that doesn't always mean anything, especially at the linebacker position, just because we just talked about Marshall for Troy. So, statistics, stats can go the opposite way. We just talked about Crosby in a low area in college and a high area. Well, the same thing can happen the opposite way, where you have high numbers in college. Don't mean that you're going to have high numbers in the NFL. But, so Harmon's been very productive as far as, a good, it seems like he's somebody that can, make the tackle and do what he's supposed to do for the defense. But Cade Hall and Fehoko, so these are the guys, especially Fehoko, that you believe have draftable traits. Cade Hall was somebody I was kind of surprised that he didn't elevate his game a little bit to become draftable, because he was really productive his first couple of years, I believe. And defensive player of the year for the conference just a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's Mountain West defensive player of the year in 2020, the COVID year. And like you said, that's the one thing that just keeps coming up on my sheet is I'm just not seeing any progression from year to year. I've been watching him since 2020 and watched him a lot in 2021, watched him a lot this year. And you're kind of seeing the same guy, not very effective with his hands. I think there's what bothers me about his game the most when it comes to is he draftable or not, it's the tightness in the lower body, the hips, the knees, the ankles. They just don't move fluidly. And I think he's going to have a hard time playing under the pads of NFL blockers. And the athleticism up the edge, it's not enough to make up for that. Like, I don't.
Well, do you think he could be more of a interior 4-3 penetrator?
In certain packages, I don't think he's going to be big enough for that.
Okay.
If you're going to say, hey, we have a NASCAR package on 3rd down, maybe. I don't think the get off is there for him to really be that kind of player. Like, I don't see the NFL saying, hey, Cade Hall, we need a rusher up the middle. You're going to go up there. I just don't think there's enough juice out of the stance on him. Good player. Father played in the NFL. The NFL lineage always helps. And I think he'll be at least on a practice squad. I just think the ceiling's really low with him. Fehoko, I do think, has a little bit more NFL potential in him. Plays heavy-handed, a little bit more power, a little bit more juice, better bend in the lower body. Led the conference with 18.5 tackles for loss, 3-time first-team all-conference. He was the Mountain West Defensive Player this year. So you're going to see 2 conference player of the years wearing the same uniform in this game.
And San Jose
and
State's
10
losing
sacks over
some
his.
really big time
Yeah.
defenders.
Yeah, they're gonna, especially in that conference at that level. That's watching those two walk out the door is going to be a hard pill to swallow for him. He's going to be at the Shrine game. I think that's going to be a huge week for him.
Okay.
He's that those weeks. I love the Shrine game. We used to work with them, and it's you don't have the cream of the crop showing up to that game, but there are so many quality NFL players that play in that game, and it's fun to watch that roster practice against each other throughout the week and say, hey, there's a dozen of these guys are going to be big time players in the NFL, important players in
Didn't
the NFL
Brady
for
play in
winning
the Shrine?
teams. Brady, the Chiefs have been going after Shrine players a lot over the past few years, and I think they're one of the best teams in the NFL. Who doesn't? And I think it's important. It's almost more fun to kind of find the diamonds in the rough in those games.
Sure.
And
yeah.
in Senior Bowl, those guys are good. They're going to be top 150 picks. So I think I'm really excited to watch what he does out there.
Okay, now let's move on to the Liberty Bowl game, and that is, I was going to say Liberty Bowl, but there is a Liberty Bowl, and that is the Boca Raton Bowl, Toledo and Liberty. Nobody knows how Liberty's going to play because ever since Hugh Freeze, the whispers started to occur, and then the reality game against New Mexico State was a disaster. But even the last few games just looked like something was off, so I don't know how Liberty's going to perform, but Darrell Johnson, who look as a defensive lineman, he didn't even, not to say that all defensive linemen are going to be high range tacklers for your team, but if you're going to be a top prospect for Liberty, you would expect maybe statistically more, but that's why you have to look inside the scouting report, look at what you see on tape, and tell me why Darrell Johnson right now is considered the top NFL prospect for Liberty.
Second team All-American, led the country with 22.5 tackles for loss. When you see guys constantly making plays in the opposing backfield, run and pass, pressuring the passer, and then you see the way he does it, right? Good bend, really long arms, great hand placement. The skill set is there. I don't know if the size and strength are there yet. I think this is a classic example of someone that's probably going to get drafted, but won't see the field early on. Maybe some special teams work, but he really needs to kind of grow into the frame a little bit more, add a little bit more muscle mass, and develop a power game. But if he does, he has a lot of these traits that you wish you could teach to other more talented players. The skill set of rushing the passer, having double moves, knowing how to get inside shoulder. His alignment will probably not be that versatile. I think he's a 3-4 outside linebacker only.
Okay, so he's a pass rush specialist?
Yeah, I would say he's a pass rush specialist that has the skill set to be an every down player way down the road. But I think a team will draft him not early on. A team will draft him late in day 3 to try and develop the pass rush traits.
Okay. And then the opponent, Toledo, all 4 of your top prospects are on the defensive side, led by a guy that, look, if you're following college football and you're following the MAC and Toledo, you know Jamal Hines. He's been an impact player for them for the last several years.
Yeah, a little undersized. When I say undersized, the height and the reach aren't always there, but great job with his hands. It's funny. I feel like every game we're talking about, it's just like these kind of late round edge draft prospects that, no matter who you are, no matter what team you are, there's always a spot for another quality edge player. And Hines has done enough for long enough to prove that he can be a productive player. Now it'll be up to him and the coaching staff to develop some of these traits and try to hide some of the issues in his game. But there's enough here that I think that someone's going to give him a late round look and see if they can put him in that 3-4 outside linebacker.
His stats went down a little bit this year.
Yeah, a lot more attention. Okay. I think he saw more double teams this year than the combined previous 2 years. And there really wasn't much else as on the edges that we saw as pass rushers. They have a undersized interior guy who I have listed as a free agent, and Desjuan Johnson, 46.5 career tackles for loss. But in terms of pass rush, Hines was really the only one that caused for concern, and I think it gave him a little too much attention from the opposition.
Ohio State transfer Dallas Gant led the team in tackles this season.
Led team in tackles, finally got onto the field as a linebacker on a consistent basis. He just could not break through at Ohio State. They did give him some special team looks and some package looks, but now we're seeing him as an every down player, ball linebacker, but also as a pass rusher. There's some pass rush traits here as a blitzer that I think some defenses that are really blitz heavy are going to like a lot. The workout numbers are going to be a positive. I think he's going to measure in very well. He's fast. He's quick. The fluidity in coverage is not there. I noticed it right away. That will be an issue, but I think some teams are going to overlook that immediate payback and say, hey, the athleticism is there. He just doesn't have a lot of experience. He was on the bench at Ohio State for years. So I that's where I see him being, is just like maybe drafted late, maybe a preferred free agent, but a lot of upside here.
And the two Johnsons who you have as free agents, Deshaun and Deontay. Deontay took a big jump over Deshaun overall, and yet Deshaun is still, you believe, a little bit more?
Yeah, the only issue is the size, 6'3", 275. Where are you putting him? He's not athletic enough to play the outside. That's not big enough to play inside. But, I look at those 46.5 career tackles for loss, and, I see teams like the Broncos and the Colts. They actually use some of these hybrid bodies better than others, and they know how to get something out of them from a penetration perspective. And I do think he has to get off to do that at the next level. But probably a project where you're going to probably have to wait a year or two while he adds as much muscle mass to his frame as possible. Deontay is, again, great year. Fun player to watch, too. If you can get eyes on this game, he's just a fun kid to watch play football. Has special teamer written all over him. Could that get drafted late? Sure. Just don't see the feel and the instincts that I want out of a linebacker. But I do think teams are going to see him as a special teamer. And those two, they get drafted in round 7 for special teams prowess. And he might be one of them.
Yeah, matter of fact, I was having a conversation online about the Jets defense, and someone talked about what some of their needs next season. And one was safety, linebacker. And I said, look, I agree with you, but in my opinion, what they probably should do is find a hybrid. Find somebody that could play in the box, somebody that could help cause turnovers, that kind of guy. And we will, by the way, one of the other things that we're going to do is we're going to come up with specialty lists and rankings. Once the regular rankings are out and the positions and such, we'll have special rankings where, hey, if you want to know who we'll give you like a top 5 or a top 10 of hybrid skilled players. Like if you're just looking for a hybrid player, here's Dave's top 5, top 10 hybrid DBs, linebackers coming out of the NFL. Same thing with a lot of other positions. Like we'll probably say, here are the top 5 or 10 slot receivers coming out. Who are the top nickel cornerbacks coming out? So we're going to have we're going to break those lists down. Once we get into the meat of the the meat of the NFL draft season in a few months. And I'm looking forward to that as well, because a lot of times nowadays, you just can't put out position, player. You have to really break down where these guys can fit, because that's what everybody wants to know.
Yep. Roles. You want to think about roles more than positions. What role does a team need?
Yes.
Offense and defense, and I think that's where the value of those will come from.
All right. Next game is the New Orleans Bowl. South Alabama, Western Kentucky. We'll start with Western Kentucky, and probably shouldn't have even put Austin Reed in here, but look, it is what it is. He could always change his mind, but it does look like, because it looked like he was going to transfer, and now he's convinced to stay, and I think it was financial, I believe. Yeah. They gave him some money, so he's staying at Western Kentucky another season. Good for him, because there's no reason for Austin Reed to come out, even though I think he was transferring, not coming out anyway. So just keep that in mind, and that's the reason why he's not like the top guy. I'm not sure he'd be the top guy anyway. But David Davis is your top player on the board, the wide receiver for the Hilltoppers.
Yeah, when I do background checks on these guys, I love reading what coaches say about players that transfer. And because a lot of times, even I would say as recent as 5-6 years ago, when you see a transfer, it's automatic, almost like a red flag. Like something did not go right at that previous program, whether it was trouble, whether it's academics, whether it's relationships. It's not the case as much with how easy and how common the transfer portal is moving kids around. But I still do it. I still try to read up on kids that transfer, just see if I can get any extra information. And Mario Cristobal, what he said about David Davis probably goes top 5 in whatever I've ever heard a coach say about a player that transferred. Just the most unselfish player he's ever coached, his favorite player he's ever coached. Did not say the most talented, and we're not talking about a high pick here. We're talking about someone that might be a 7th-round pick. But this kid played wide receiver. He played corner. He played returner. When injuries popped up at that Oregon program, he was simply the guy that just said, put me in. I'll figure it out. And he's a football player. He is going to be a wide receiver at the next level. And he does not come without traits. He has elite explosion, elite leaping ability.
So what's the problem?
He just hasn't put it together from a skill set perspective yet. Are his ball skills there? Can he concentrate? Can he track the ball over his shoulder? The route tree at Western Kentucky and Oregon even is just so limited that I think there's going to be a lot of unknown with him. Like, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do that? The workouts will be important for him. But 6'2", 195 with that kind of speed, that kind of explosion, and he does have some production on tape. He plays, and you know what you're getting out of him. Like those Cristobal comments, those mean something.
Absolutely.
You know, he's going to be on a roster next year, no question.
Practice
and he's
squad.
going to make – yep. I think he's going to be on he'll be on a 53, I think, next year. And just for the fact that he'll be a factor on special teams with speed, and you can put him on the back end of your wide receiver depth chart.
And the other receiver you have is Jalen Hall. You don't have him right now as a draftable player, but Hall, Davis and Hall, by the way, were 2nd and 3rd on the team in receiving this year. What's the difference between Hall and Davis?
Hall's got a little bit less physicality to him. He might have a little bit more speed, a little bit more fluidity as a route runner, like just easier moving hips and getting in and out of breaks a little bit quicker. He did finish the season strong. They're actually pretty similar size. He just doesn't play as strong in contested situations, gets thrown around, not good off the line against press coverage. Not that they see it that often in college, but you can see he's just not good against contact. And, you know, you can be a blazer, but if you can't get off contact, it won't matter as much, right? It almost takes away from your speed. So I think that you just can't do as much with Hall as you can with Davis.
And Rusty Stats, the only other player from on your list that you believe could end up as a draftable player.
Draftable player just because I like his name. You know, the Rusty Stats is a really quick, nimble, balanced mover off the snap. That's a thing with a lot of NFL teams. Last year, I said, hey, Cam Jurgens is the center from Nebraska. He's going to get drafted by Philly. I just know it, and that's who is backing up Jason Kelce right now. There are just teams that put more value. They almost value that more than any trait, size, power, the ability to move guys. And Stats, he's not going to blow you out like Jurgens did in a workout, but you can watch him play football for 10 minutes. You know that he's going to always reach his points. He gets there with balance. He gets there with control, a lot of starting experience. You know, there's a lot of NFL centers that are either drafted round 6, 7, or undrafted free agents. Yeah. And this kid, I think, has that kind of feel to his game when I watch him.
By the way, I don't notice a designation as far as a draft status for Caleb Oliver. Safety from Western Kentucky safety, Caleb Oliver.
Oh, I have free agent grade on.
Anyone he's free agent? Okay.
Yeah, I have free agent on. Oh, at the bottom. Yeah, free agent down there. Okay. Yeah, the coverage is a plus, great size. When I say coverage is a plus, it has more to do with like his feel and his instincts. But the speed, the long speed, I think that's going to be probably what holds him out of the draft. And, you know, 6'4", 215, you don't automatically put this, oh, he's probably a bruiser. He's not. You know, he plays hard, but he's not a big tackler, big run supporter. So if you're not going to have a specialty against the run, you don't have enough speed to play center field and coverage, I think it's going to be an issue. But I think the frame and the feel and coverage is going to help him out a little bit.
South Alabama, your top player, and you have 2 players that you think could go to the 6th round. One is wide receiver Jalen Wayne, Reggie Wayne's nephew, who actually has improved his game slightly, it appears, each season, culminating with him being the number 1 guy for the Jaguars as far as the wide receivers.
Yep. Yeah, Wayne is just similar to his uncle, just good at everything. Doesn't have a standout trait. He's not overly big. He's not overly fast. But the routes, the hands, not letting the ball hit the turf, the quick and suddenness to get the ball and immediately move upfield. The league is in love with yards after catch right now. I think Wayne's going to specialize in that. just because of how smooth and how easy and how much body awareness he has. And that lineage is going to help a little bit. He's got a Senior Bowl invite, I believe. So that will be a huge week for him. He'll be one of the, I would say, top 10 guys on that roster that could probably get the most from having a good week there.
Now, the other player, Luter, who's on your list.
Yeah.
This kid, if you look at it, he had a really good year last year. 4 interceptions. He had multiple double-digit pass breakups. Seems to be good. Seems to also be not only good in coverage, but good against the run. He appears to have, good length and athleticism. Could this guy be a really good sleeper?
Yes. Yeah, if you're into putting sleepers together and trying to get them out there first before others, he did get a Senior Bowl invite, so I think his name's going to be out there a little bit. He was on our radar very early before the year. Like you said, the tools and last year's tape was very good. This year's tape was not as friendly. He's vulnerable to getting beat deep, but I don't think it's an issue with his speed or tools. I think it's route recognition, and that can be acquired over time. You also see a lot of quality cornerback prospects where that does not develop, and that's what ends up pushing them out of the league or pushing them into that bust status. But you're looking at a day 3 pick here, and you feel safe with that kind of risk that if it does work out, he's got every tool that you had, and he's proven that he can play at a high level for an entire season.
And he's going to the Senior Bowl. He could definitely raise his stock
Absolutely
with a good week. Okay, next up, Baylor and their game against Air Force. And this is the Armed Forces Bowl on the 22nd. And I think this is just all depending upon if Baylor wants to play the game. They're superior in talent. But it's not easy getting ready to play military schools and bowls because a lot of times it's almost looked at as a disappointing game for usually those teams. That's why the military schools do a good job of either upsetting teams in bowls or covering those games. But Baylor, Aranda's a very good defensive coach. I'm very intrigued. I doubt he's going to let his players slip because they're going to have to be disciplined against Air Force. But let's start with, and the one guy really that's going to probably be most important in the game is also maybe the top prospect that we're going to talk about today. Siaki, is it Ika?
I have Ika.
Ika, okay. Well, we'll figure that out. I'm sure.
We'll find out.
Yeah. But this dude is big. He's a big dude.
Yep. He looks like Nevaeh. If you're trying to visualize what is this kid going to look like on tape, he's 6'4", 354. Is there some bad weight on him? I do think so. He's not the prospect that Vea was coming out of Washington, but that's what he looks like. It's not like he's not a sloppy 354. It's almost like he's very top cut. He's very top heavy, and that sometimes can give someone this perception that they're out of shape. They don't work hard. But the positive is that there's just not as much mass below the waist. His legs are on the smaller side especially when you're comparing upper lower, but it makes him quick. He plays a quick, sudden game. You don't expect to see it, and it doesn't even always show up. I think one of my frustrations with him is there's a lot of stretches of play where he just disappears. And, these no-huddle offenses in the Big 12, they couldn't get him off the field. We see this a lot with defensive tackles. Jordan Davis last year being one of them that if they're on the field a little too much, they immediately become a shell of what they really are. So that was like my one negative on him. But, his movement, his ability to move and the twitch is better than expected. And what he did do in 2021 that he did not do this year was make a lot of plays behind the line of scrimmage. And no matter what, I think a team is drafting him to be a 3-4 nose tackle no matter what. They're not drafting him to be a penetrator.
No.
But as we're seeing with a few players in the league right now, that can develop. If you have enough juice out of your stance, you have enough power, and then you learn how to use your hands, you can develop into a quality bull rusher. I think that's what some teams are going to view him as from like a 2 to 3 year project. But before that comes, or if that never comes, I think the floor with him is a plus run defender that can control 2 gaps at once.
Yes, because it's even it's unusual for a nose tackle to see no sacks and 2 tackles for loss in the entire season.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that
Yeah.
doesn't
He's going to be a
again.
guy.
That
You
doesn't
just
mean
look
anything.
at his traits and tools, and you say, "Hey, I think we could do something with them."
Yeah.
But because of that, and like I could see him falling into the middle of day 3.
Now,
Some guys don't agree with me on that. They say no matter
no
what, he's
matter
a
what,
second or third
yeah.
round pick. But
Well, somebody will fall in love with him.
Yeah, I do, but then it just becomes: is there enough demand for his services in the
That's
draft?
true.
And I have to really see how many teams are going to be looking for that 3-4 nose tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing, is that no matter how, even if you're dominating, you're going to get moved down the draft board because you're not playing every down. And when you're not playing every down, it's hard to justify your draft status. Okay,
Yep.
now Connor Galvin, you have him as a 6th round potential draft pick. I look at this guy's resume and everything that's been said about him. He's got the really good size. He's got a lot of awards. A lot of people really giving him some thumbs up on his play in the college level. And you figured that, okay, this is a guy to keep an eye on at the next level. Are you where you have him going? Is that a little bit lower than where most people have?
I think that's where, I mean, by most people, and this is by no means offensive to anyone, it's the people that I talk to that I know have maybe a little bit more, even more experience than me. Like they kind of, or have some contacts, right? A lot of them are saying it's going to be day 3. I think the national media, they're not looking at it from a scouting perspective. They're looking at it from experience, All-American accolades. They will just automatically say, hey, this is a day 2 pick, start in the NFL. And trust me, in 2020, I can remember watching him play without knowing who he was yet. And I just remember seeing him get out of the stance. And again, like I said I think it was the last time we met, you watch a few plays, you're like, all right, that dude's a player. And then you have to do a deeper dive on him. And that first look on him, I said, wow, that kid looks like he has the goods. I didn't do a deep dive on him, but I just saw the body control. He wasn't getting beat at all. He never looked like he was out of control. And I said, you know what? I'm going to put him as probably one of the top 5 or 6 tackles in that 2020 class.
Which a
right?
lot of people have.
Right. And then I watch more. He doesn't come out. 2021, I start watching, and I'm like, all right, he's definitely going to come out after the 2021 season. So I had him in my top 7 of senior offensive tackles all year.
Wow. Okay.
And then I watch his tape at the end of the year, assuming he's going to come out. He ended up not coming out, obviously, right? And the more tape I saw, the less I liked. And whenever that kind of situation happens, when I start doing the deep dive on the player, on his skill set, when you see that kind of big nosedive from what your initial perception was, that's almost always ends up as a huge red flag to me.
Biggest issues?
So balance, power, those are the 2 biggest things. I think that gets eaten alive in the NFL. Just the anchor isn't good enough. You could even when you watch him play, look at the lower body. It's small. He's got good height, weight, speed, but the lower body just doesn't have the anchor. When you don't have the anchor in pass protection, NFL defensive ends, they won't even use the rush move. So they'll just run straight through you.
Is he too tall to play inside?
I wouldn't say too tall, but I would say that I don't like his lack of ability to bend naturally. So, yes, I think being tall makes that more difficult. But there are players his height that are just fine in the NFL, but they need to work harder at lowering that pad level so they can win the leverage game. He allowed 5 sacks this year.
That's too much.
Sacks. That's too much. Yeah. Penalized 3 times. There's just a lot of slack. There's too many losses on tape with him. I'll just leave it at that. And I think he gets drafted. I think he could be a quality player at some point from a backup perspective, but I would not draft him thinking I'm getting an eventual starter at some point.
All right, and then you also have as a draftable player cornerback Mark Milton. And tell us about Milton. What's his upside?
Movement traits are excellent. Really, really easy hips when you see him change direction. It's one thing to run in a straight line, but when you see a kid like this move easily left to right, no loss of balance, I love seeing that. He's got all those traits. Just didn't get a lot of production. Saw him get beat a few times near the end zone. I think there's a lot of guessing in his game and less feel. And you see that with a lot of quality corners. I'm not going to say that's going to knock him down that much. But I wish I saw a little bit more production out of him. But I think the movement traits are enough to get him drafted, and just the triangle numbers, the height, the weight, the speed.
What was it, by the way, before we move on, I know he's one of your free agent players, but what was it about Jackson Player? I remember like a couple of years ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, that he seemed to be a player that was on the rise.
It's going to get my
but I don't know if that's just something where, maybe that was just, I don't know if it was a PFF thing, that could get carried. I could get a player carried, you can get carried away with a player that way, or just seeing his name in other areas where it looked like, hey, if you're looking for players here, this position, keep, it just, and I'm just not seeing that. And you put a seal of not recommending him. That made more sense to me that, all of a sudden this guy isn't as good as I thought he was going to be.
So I have a measurement on him that's 5'11", 294.
Oh.
I'm sure the school's going to list him higher, but I use the measurements that I get from my source. So that immediately, you're not going to see a defensive player get drafted at that height unless there's an absolutely standout trait or production level. 30, he's under 32-inch arms too, so 76-inch wingspan. Like, you're talking like bottom of the barrel size. And if you're bottom of the barrel size, there's got to be a standout trait to your game that's going to get you drafted. And he doesn't have it. So I think that's where the answer is on Jackson. Fun player to watch, though. I have a lot of positive notes on just, like I said earlier with someone else, just fun to watch football. Fun to watch him play football. Penetration is a plus. Engine is a plus. Creates a lot on secondary effort. But when you're talking NFL draft, it's those numbers are going to be deal breakers for some teams.
Well, and while you were talking, I'm realizing what it was. It was probably the fact that he leaves Tulsa. When you're playing the position he's playing, you're getting 15 tackles for loss, 5 sacks, 50 tackles. Okay, that's nice. Let's see what he does elevating up to Baylor.
Yeah.
And the numbers go way down.
Yeah, and this is what we talked about when we first talking about the MAC defenders, right? Like, we do want to see those kids dominate, and I'm sure Player had enough dominate high level tape at Tulsa. But if there is ever an opportunity to play against high level competition, what do you do? And it's a risk, but I think it's something that can really answer a question for an NFL team. And based on the size and what he did at Baylor in the Big 12, once he upped that ante a little bit. I think he'll be on the outside looking after the draft. I think he'll get a look, though, for camp.
The Independence Bowl, and that's going to be on Friday. So I believe this is our last. No, we have one more game to go. And this is the Houston game for Louisiana Lafayette. Now, 2 of their top players aren't going to play. Yeah. Michael Jefferson and Andre Jones. I mean, who do they think they are? That they're not playing in a bowl game when you can play a game against a Power 5 school. I'm not. What's that about?
I was confused about Jones. I don't know if there's an injury there. If there's not an injury there, and he really just did this to get ready for the draft, I think it's a lost opportunity for him. But again, it's who's in their ears right now. Is it family? Is it the agent? It's an agent's worst. They don't care about the bowl game at all. No. They care about these guys getting paid. And I think that some of these kids are probably a little bit easier to convince than others. Jefferson, he's got a shot at being a top 150 pick, all right? And I think he's going to have to run well. But he's got great size, great ball skills. He was on our radar prior to the year, and he had a lot of good tape early on. And then Mel Kiper put him, I think, in his top 10 of all wide receivers, juniors and seniors. He does a few things throughout the fall. I can't keep track of too much, but I know he puts a list out there in October, I think, and he was on it. So once there goes his sleeper status, because now everyone's going to say they knew about him. But the size is there, the ball skills are there, the production's there, and sometimes these kids, this is the information I don't have access to that some others do. If he goes out there, maybe he is running a 4.4 in his workouts right now. If this kid goes sub 4.4. I don't think it, because I don't see that kind of speed on tape. You could be easily talking about a day 2 pick because of the other tools that match with it. So maybe that's why he opted out.
By the way, Chris Smith, who you have as a free agent, had a much better year last year, but that's when they were a better team. They had the whole coach, and we went to Florida Napier. So he didn't have as productive of a season, but there's enough tape on the guy. So is he just one of these? Just another running back that's going to be
Yeah.
available as a free agent. Nothing special about Chris Smith.
Yeah, nothing special about him. Runs hard, breaks tackles. San Francisco will pick him up in the undrafted free agency period, and he'll make him a 1,000-yard rusher.
We know how that goes. Yeah. Let's talk to you about Houston because, I think Clayton Tune is actually a pretty interesting player to scout because before the season, I wouldn't have, no way. Clayton Tune, NFL quarterback, no way. I don't see it. But he's just kind of grown on me. And I just, all of a sudden, especially because of his athletic ability, he's not just going to stand in the pocket. He can actually move around with his footwork and so forth, that I'm like, you know what? Okay, maybe he finds the right spot in the NFL. Maybe.
Yeah. He'll definitely get drafted. I don't think there's any question about that. I don't think it's going to be any earlier than, I think his peak will be middle of day 3. I think it's going to be towards the end. But what you like about him is the feel in the pocket that he has, and this is, again, you have to really do a deep dive on this and try to compare. That's whenever I scout quarterbacks, I try to do them back to back to back, because the more you watch that position, when you really zero in, you see a lot of guys have a feel for pressure. I think the best quarterbacks in the NFL do a good job of this, right? They use their legs when they have to, but the other use of their lower body, their footwork, is simply just to sidestep pressure while keeping their eyes downfield. And that's one of the standout traits of Tune's game. That's what makes him look like a pro. Sometimes we'll say, like, oh, he looks like a pro, but you don't really can't put into words what that actually means. I think that's the trait that stands out among his competitors, the other quarterbacks in the draft. I think there's guys that will be drafted ahead of him that don't do as good a job as him. And it keeps the guys downfield. He really jumped up in 2021, like really 2 back-to-back years of high-quality football. I think turnovers are a little bit of an issue. I believe he had 10 interceptions, 8 fumbles. That's too much, and he's going to have to clean that up. He does evade, like I said, he does a nice job of evading pressure, but he does not do a nice job of keeping the ball where it needs to be when pass rushers start to get near him. That can be coached up, though, so I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, and the thing, there's no question he needs to improve his game at the next level. But then again, we said the same thing about guys like Brock Purdy. And you just don't know if, you got to get coached up at the next level and see what you go. But at least there's going to be GMs out there that are going to take a look at him and going to go, yeah, I can make this guy work. I can fix some of those issues and make this guy if the worst case scenario, a really good backup for our football team.
I agree with you. I think Purdy's a good example of that. Again, Purdy was a guy that didn't really impress you with anything other than the fact, but now when you watch him, it's like he just knows what to do.
And by the way, what do they both have in common? Experience.
Yes. Yep. Great point. We talked about that last time, right? I mean, kids shot back 1,700 plus times over the course of your career. That matters.
Yes.
That matters.
What does he have? 4 years, I believe, of starting experience?
Yep. 4+ years.
And he'll be at the Senior Bowl.
He's been there he has started games over the course of 5 years. So he wasn't a full-time starter early on, but he has started games for that team over the course of 5 different seasons.
Yep. He can definitely be like that, one of those guys that, hey, wait a second, who's that guy coming in? Our starter's out, and this guy's a rookie, a 5th-round draft pick, and hey, man, I've got the experience that these first-round guys that have been playing for 2 years don't. So I can acclimate myself to the pro level a little bit quicker. All right, Tank Dell. We talked about him on our wide receiver show. And hey, see, here's the funny thing. Clayton Tune and Tank Dell are playing. And Michael Jefferson and Andre Jones are not. I mean, come on.
I agree.
What are you doing?
I know. I did extra research to make sure these two are playing because I almost didn't believe it at first. And I love the fact that they're playing, and just more props to those guys and what they say about playing and finishing the season and their careers with their teammates. I'm telling you, man, that means I'm big on culture in the NFL and building teams the right way. And these are the kind of guys I want on my team.
Yeah, the thing is you don't necessarily have to knock the guy, but you give bonus points for the guys that play.
Yes, that's a great way of putting it.
So anyway, you can check out, because I believe we also have an individual Tank Dell report on the channel as well, taken out of the wide receiver show that we did. So you can check that out. And Owens, he's also, you got him as a 5th or a 6th round grade to safety.
Yep. Yeah, John Cooper, really the main defensive scout for our lads, knows D-backs as well as anyone, and we both felt really strongly about this kid. Even though he doesn't get talked about that much, he's a former JUCO All-American. He's got experience at corner and safety, and you could see in the way he tracks the ball. It looks like a receiver when you're talking about someone that's tracking a ball over the shoulder or looking downhill on it. No hesitation, no loss of balance. Really maximizes his speed, which I think he's going to measure in pretty well. Height, weight, speed. 6', 200, 4'4", 4'5" range. He checks a lot of boxes. And again, it's one of these kids that you watch him play and you said that looks like a pro safety. And he did a lot of damage that does not show up in the box score on that Houston defense. When you watch the all-22 tape, he just has a natural flow to the action, a natural flow to the ball, and really good at reading the quarterback and routes at the same time, which is a really tough trait to find in young safeties.
Our last game is the Gasparilla Bowl, Missouri and Wake. Unfortunately, the young star receiver from Missouri is transferring, so we're not going to get to see him in the game. The kid Lovett. I'm not sure if he's picked a school yet, but he's young anyway. Let's talk about Wake first. And Sam Hartman, we didn't really talk too much about him in the quarterback report. But look, I understand why he's not considered a day 2 guy or even an early day 3 guy. But look, if you're looking for guys late in the draft, you stick them on your team as a number 3 early on, maybe a practice squad guy early on. This is a guy I think you could work with. A lot of experience. He's got the as you put it, the gunslinger in him. Those are all quality traits that you're not going to invest highly in them. And let's just see what you got after putting him in your program for a couple of years.
Yeah, he's aggressive, but he's calculated. And some teams, some offensive minds will like that more than others. I even think right now it's probably trending more towards coaches wanting these quarterbacks to be aggressive. I think for a long time it's all about, and nobody wants turnovers, but it was more about protect the ball, don't take any chances. But now I think a lot of teams are trending towards, hey, let's be a little bit more risky. Let's kind of go for it with the way the league is set up, with the penalties, how easy it is to get a flag now. And Hartman might be coming into the league at the same time. Now he does have an extra year of eligibility. Still a little unsure if he's going to come back or not. But he stands tall under the pressure. He's a tough dude. I love when I watch quarterbacks in college stare down the barrel of a gun just so they can give their receiver an extra half second to get open. And that he does that week to week. He takes big hits. He gets right up. He's one of those guys. He almost reminds me of Gardner Minshew. Like when he gets hit, it almost elevates his play a little bit. He likes it. He's a football player. Chews glass. Rough ending to the year for him. 8 interceptions over the last 5 games. And that's part of what you get when you go after a gunslinger like this.
Well, but I think a lot of that can be attributed to the fact that it was no mistake that started the week after Clemson beat Syracuse and pretty much eliminated Wake Forest from any shot, because this was a championship team in the ACC last year. They went to the championship game. So if you didn't go back again, what are we doing here? That kind of so I think there was a lack of concentration and drive, especially when you consider the 2 games back to back right after that. He threw 6 picks.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to forgive him for that. But but again, we're not talking about a top guy anyway.
Agreed.
Would it be better for him to come back? And I know it's easy to say, of course, but just knowing which quarterbacks will be drafted this year and which ones will come out next year, is it even as far as the top guys, or do you think he'd stand a better chance of moving up the boards next year?
I think he's got a shot to be the quarterback that if Wake Forest puts together a surprise season next year and he plays well, he's got the intangibles and the leadership traits that if he goes out and just has that breakout season that, example, not to keep bringing him up, but Joe Burrow has, I could see him moving into a top 100 pick because he has the other traits. I just think he needed that 1 year of, a little bit less mistakes, maybe big plays, big moments, big wins on the national stage. Just don't think he ever really got that opportunity.
Well, he had the Clemson game, which was an awesome game. I mean, he had tremendous numbers in that game against the
6
best
touchdowns.
defense he's probably going to face all season. Unfortunately, they
Yeah.
lost the game because their defense,
Right.
that really could have springboarded their entire season had they held on to win that football game.
Yep, I agree. That could have been like like you said, like a trademark game, a landmark game for him. But sometimes when it happens early in the year, you forget about it. You know, like maybe it's a recency bias issue where I kind of remember just looking back at those last 5 games of his. You know,
Yes.
it kind of brought down, kind of almost erased the Clemson game, which it shouldn't. But it's I feel that way about the college football playoffs. It's really about what happens in the second half more than the first.
All right, now A.T. Perry, who he throws to, excellent size. So you love the size. Love his average yards per catch last season and 15 touchdowns last season, which was a school record.
Yep.
So, and you're looking at a guy that has good. I mean, he was in high school. He won the county long jump, so and played all county hoops, so he's got all sorts of athletic ability. What is it that we need to see from A.T. Perry? You have him as a 5th or 6th round. So is it all about the 40 for A.T. Perry?
Yeah. For him, it's going to be about the speed. And I have written down 3 different times in my notes that, my season-long notes that start in the summer, if this kid runs a good 40, and good for receiver to me is if you're 4.4 something, 4.48, yes. 4.47, that's good enough for me. I'm going to put him into the top 100 overall. And I don't think it's going to get there. I think he's going to be closer to 4.6 than he is 4.5.
4.6.
And you just don't see the downfield separation with him. Part of the reason why you see so many highlight tapes of him in contested situations, which he normally wins because of this ridiculous radius that he has, he doesn't get himself open from movement. And the NFL wants to see separation. It doesn't need to be Tyreek Hill separation, but we need to see him separate a little bit better. And the thing about it is I think he has elite lower body traits to be an elite route runner, like the looseness. It's, you see certain joints, his ankles, his knees and hips, they move differently than others. And that basketball long jump background that he has, it shows up on the field. And he's tough. He's tough, hard-nosed. He'll go over the middle. He catches the ball in traffic. It's just all about whether or not he can separate from NFL corners.
Well, as if he can. So what do you want him to run at worst where you can say, okay, with everything else he brings to the table, if he gets coached up, that 40 times good enough for me?
4.49.
Okay.
If I see that, I'm gonna right now I have him as a 5th or 6th rounder. If I see a 4.49, I'm going round 3 or 4.
Okay. And by the way, just because, and if he does run, say, a 4.55, all you're saying is where you're grading him in the draft, it doesn't mean that he still can't have a long career in the NFL.
No, if he stays healthy and he can maybe just get a little bit, refine his game a little bit so he can get a little bit more separation, he'll be a player. And we'll be talking about this kid in the NFL.
All right, tight end, Blake Whiteheart. So Blake Whiteheart, statistically, you don't really see anything special there. You think he could get drafted, though, in the 6th or 7th round? Is that more because of his blocking ability?
We have NFL-ready blocker, and I feel like every year we just see less and less of this coming out of college. Yeah. Because the tight ends are just, they're wide receivers in college, and that's why when I see someone that can do both, I get really excited. And we have a lot of them this year. This tight end class is going to be, I think, one of the best I've ever graded.
Wow!
And Whiteheart is not in that group, but for the teams that are looking for a blocker that has some athleticism to him, he's got decent speed. He's going to be a 4.7 type. Just wasn't a huge part of the passing game, but he'll be on a depth chart saying, hey, we need a third blocker in there, a third tight end, or a motion tight end. He can play both the Y and the F spots. He can line up against the deep end. You can motion him and tell him to block in the move. I believe in him from that perspective, and I still think there's some untapped upside as a receiver.
Missouri, there's not a whole lot because McGuire, Manuel, and Coleman all opted out.
Yep.
So we'll talk about those guys later in the process because they ain't playing.
Yeah. I would say Robinson, the D tackle, number 6, Darius Robinson, NFL body. He flashes, and if he can go out and put together a big game here, I think he could just leave a nice recency bias in some of the talent evaluators' minds that he's got a lot of NFL tools. Just the consistency hasn't been there, but he has shown something. So I'd like to kind of see another good game out of him here.
And there was a lot expected out of Trajan Jeffcoat after a really good COVID year, and it just hasn't materialized.
2 straight years, I've just kind of been left wanting more from him. And like you said, it was that weird season that, yes, it does count towards the evaluation. 2020 to me is just weird, right? For a lot of reasons, a lot of factors you can't really account for in the scouting process. But his production got less and less year to year since that season.
Okay, now when we return on Friday, our first game we'll be talking about will be the Hawaii Bowl. That'll be the San Diego State game against Middle Tennessee, and then after that, I don't even know exactly how many they're going to be, but there'll be a bunch because we have a lot of games on the 27th that we'll be recording. So those games we will be talking about on Friday. So just keep an eye on that. And then, as we've talked about before on the show, our schedule, once we're done with this, we're going to get back to going finishing our reports on the top ranking positions. We'll go on defense because we haven't done defense yet. So we'll probably have 2 to 3 shows. I'm thinking more like 3 on the defensive side. And then we've got a whole bunch of other really cool shows and reports that we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing 32 NFL team reports at some point. We're going to be doing, we're going to have a specific number of college specified team reports, meaning, hey, if you follow this team, here are the players that you want to keep an eye on. And that's definitely going to correlate to the traffic on the specific channel. So I know we have a lot of Rutgers followers, and so Michigan. And so I'm going to go towards those teams. Maybe we'll have about 5 or 6 of those specialty ones, and just so many other really cool shows, including those mock draft shows that I talked about. So can't wait for all of it, Dave.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. We're just getting heated up, guys.
Yeah.
Just getting heated up.
Perfectly said. Dave, I will talk to you again before Christmas. I'll talk to you on Friday.
Sir. Yes, sir. Thank you.
You got it.